So what's up? This video is a video response to Peter about which are the common misconceptions or insecurities that can slowly eat away at us that we might not be able to see. These are the top 3 insecurities that I have compiled from all of my clients and my one-on-one work that I've done and my own journey, which I found are the most common patterns which people have shadows, but they don't realize they have shadows. And by uncovering these blind spots, they save you years, sometimes even decades of work, because the longer they stay with us with these types of certain insecurities and blind spots, the more mature these insecurities can get, which means they're better at hiding, they're better at adapting, they're better at integrating into our psychology, and we don't want that. So here's the 3 different types of insecurities with 3 separate examples and how it applies practically to you. So there are 3 main different types of insecurities that I see guys having when it comes to shadows that can sneak up on you. This isn't something for people who are just getting into shadow work. This isn't something for people who are just getting into self-development. This is for people, and it usually affects them, who have maybe even done a bit of therapy, worked with a coach, done some courses, or just been working on themselves for a long time, but still don't feel like they've actually made the change that they wanted to have done when they first started this journey. And the first type of blind spot shadow, the first type of insecurity that can sneak up on people, and I see this a lot, is to do with feeling like I have to do X in order to get Y. What this means is feeling like in order to be attractive, in order to be seen as worthy, in order to be seen as strong, respected, grounded, independent, whatever that thing is, I have to do Y. I have to show up. I have to go to the gym. I have to win in competition. I have to approach so many women. I have to get numbers. I have to go on so many dates. All this kind of stuff. It's inherently conditional. Me, from my journey, when I was doing a lot of work in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, when I say work, I was competing a lot. What it meant was I had to win. I had to beat this guy. I had to beat these people in order to have confidence when I was on the mats, in order to have confidence when I was training, in order to have confidence and feel a certain way when I signed up for IBJJF Worlds or IBJJF Euros or the London Open or whatever it was. My confidence was inherently conditional. And what we are doing is we are not saying that we have to disown reality, that if something isn't working, that we can't put our socks up and say, okay, I lost the same time by armbar all this time, let's work on my armbar defense, or let's work on my guard defense, or anything like that. We're not saying to disown that. What I'm saying is, if you make your confidence, your attractive, or your valueness dependent on, and your worthiness dependent on whether you achieve something, whether you do something, whether you do your morning routine perfectly or have a cold shower, then that is inherently flimsy. And one of the big things that I struggled with, actually, and this came to socializing and dating, is I felt like unless I really demonstrated how strong I was or how unshakable I was or how ungrounded I was, what it felt like was I would always be interpreted as weak. Now this is a shadow blind spot, because on the surface I felt really powerful. I felt like I was getting this work done. I felt like, oh yeah, like it's just a fact of life, right? What this actually is a shadow blind spot. It's an insecurity that can sneak up on you. Whenever you are holding a conditional belief about yourself, when it comes to value, worthiness, attractiveness, confidence, all of this kind of stuff, that's almost a clear-cut example of something that's holding you back. And the extra nuance that I want to add here for maybe some people that have a question around it is to do with the fact that you do not underestimate, or you don't say that these things are not happening. You don't say that eating healthy is a bad thing, right? You don't say, oh, like in order for me to feel like I'm healthy and feel fit for this competition, I must have ate clean 100%. All this stuff is good, and I would encourage you to eat 100% clean good if it does affect your athletic ability or whatever it is. It's just an example, so apply it to whatever your situation is. But what it means is there can't be a flicker or a chink in the armor. Remember, we're human. We're not supposed to be perfect. It's perfect, imperfect practice. So if you hold yourself to an impossibly high standard, if you, like I was doing in my journey, where I would hold myself to, if I just even showed a flicker that I wasn't confident, and it means that I was a little bitch and I had to work on myself and I had to punish myself and all this kind of stuff, right? It means that those chinks in your armor, those little things that make us human, those little imperfections, they turn into this rolling boulder down a hill and they make a small problem, they make a mountain into a molehill, or they make a molehill into a mountain, rather. Because whenever you have something conditional, and whenever you're propping something up inside yourself, you're propping up your confidence to, did this girl give me a number? You're propping up your confidence to, did I just get a raise? You're propping up your confidence to, did I beat this guy in the gym? You're propping up your worthiness to, oh, did I do my morning routine? Did I get really productive, right? Whenever you're propping up something innate within you, something intrinsically you, something internally you, that means that that thing is inherently flimsy. And it's great when you're able to prop yourself up, but you should never be looking to the external in order to make you feel an internal way. So an example of a client, he didn't have too much experience dating. He'd done so much work on himself. He made good money. Now he's a founder, all that kind of good stuff. But he had insecurity around the fact that he didn't have much experience sexually. And then we'd done a ton of one-on-one work, unconscious work, in the one-on-one calls. And then he came on a retreat with me, and this belief was still kind of holding him back. And what we done in the retreat is we got into some social situations, we got him dating a little bit, we had him pushing through adversity, all of that kind of good stuff. And what he realized when he was going on dates, when he was having more dates and setting up more dates that he could actually go on in this retreat, and he had to schedule them after the retreat, what he realized was that this whole time he'd been holding himself back. Oh, I just have to get more experience and then I can be confident. No, you don't have to. You can be confident now. We're not delusional. We're not trying to say, like, it would be delusional if he was to say, yeah, I have tons of experience and I'm a sex coach or something like that, right? That would be delusional. But he wasn't delusional. He was like, okay, yeah, I might not have the most experience. That's the reality. Doesn't have anything to do with how I show up on dates, in relationships, right? That's the first blind spot. The second blind spot that I keep seeing from people, especially guys that are hard workers, maybe your typical overachiever, maybe your typical smart, analytical guys, done pretty well in life, is this constant source of skepticism and checking. Oh, is this correct? Is this right? Is this breakthrough really going to work? There's one guy who I'm working with who's not who I originally thought of, but now it's coming to mind. And his problem was always like, oh, I've been to therapy, I've had this work before. Is this actually going to be a breakthrough? So after we had a couple of breakthroughs and he had good results, but he was kind of holding himself back a little bit, I decided to tackle that shadow instead. And what this shadow was there was a part of him that wanted to protect him from disappointment, right? Oh, I'll be extra skeptical and I'll check and I'll make sure that this breakthrough actually happened, because we've had it so many times where we've had hope and nothing had happened, right? Beautiful part, beautiful protective instinct, something that we want to embrace and accept and integrate rather than let go or bash this part or for holding us back, right? And once we address this part, you see how that's insidious? That's like a little insidious blind spot. It's not a big issue in and of itself that's going to cause a disturbance in and of itself. It was a disturbance around the completion of something, right? And once we dealt with that, now he's able to have breakthroughs and fully live through the breakthrough, go through the embodiment process, not hold himself back. Like one of the issues that we recently talked about is he always had issues with actually connecting with someone in front of him. Not because he didn't want to, but because it would make him feel stifled. It would make him feel like he was going into his head. And only when he was teaching, because he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, was he able to kind of disassociate and just teach what he knew, even with something which he's world class at. If it was something that made him quite shy. When we were able to, so we tackled this issue, this shadow around skepticism a couple of months before. When this issue came up now, where the shadow or the part would have come up before, like, oh, is this really working? Instead, that part that wanted to protect us was on his side. And the next call, the very 2 weeks after this call, we're having bi-weekly one-on-one calls. He came to me and said, hey, yeah, that issue is not an issue for me anymore. There's a little bit of practice I have to do, like with everything. There's a showing up practice. He had to show up and actually socialize a bit more and put himself out there a bit more. But that's different from having the insecurity. And he no longer has the insecurity. There's another example of this where there's another client, software engineer, successful guy, and got broken up with his ex. And part of the thing that made this issue come up is before that, he was always questioning himself, like, is this actually a breakthrough? I have to test this in reality. And skepticism is great. That kind of smart analytical mindset is amazing. It got him for where he is now. But the reason why some of the breakthroughs weren't fully clicking, which I knew which he had the potential to do, and his relationship suffered and he got broken up with because there was just, like some validation seeking behaviors, wasn't fully confident in himself, wasn't fully confident in what he could offer, and it made him want to have to prove himself to his girlfriend at the time, and not a good dynamic. They broke up, all that kind of good stuff. We then took him through, or I then took him through the process of looking at this kind of more blind spot insecurity which can sneak up, which is wanting to make sure that everything's in order. And what we found was very similar to the first guy, which is it's a part that wanted to make him feel safe and protected, and wanted to hide himself from disappointment, because there's been so many times that he felt like he made a breakthrough and nothing changed. Okay. And it's funny, you're realizing a pattern. If you're listening to this right now, check in to see if there is a part that has a really good instinct and really wants to protect you, but is maybe just a little bit misguided. And then the last insecurity is, this is just the way the world is. Now, this insecurity can kind of sneak up on you because it makes you feel like you've already done the work to come up to that conclusion, right? What that means is we've already done the assessment. It's like ticking all the boxes, and this is just the way the world is. So an example for one of my clients, we'll call him James, to put this into perspective, to maybe relate to you guys a bit more, is he had this idea that it's just the way that the world was, that people are out to get you, you have to be a little bit tough, people were judging him, power dynamics, shit tests, all that kind of stuff, mainly in the professional workspace, but also when we started to talk about some dating and masculinity stuff, came up a bit in his relationship too. Part of the reason he decided to start working together with me was the fact that he had a breakup with a girl that he really loved, but then the breakup turned really toxic, because of a shadow crash, and there's a bunch of stuff happening. We don't want to blame anybody. And this that's just the way that the world is something which I related to a lot on my journey, okay? I had the idea that this is just the way the world was, that dating was hard, everything that worth doing was hard, and it was going to be hard, and if I did things the easy way, then it would mean that something was bad or something was wrong. And also specifically when it came to power dynamics too, right? Like, oh, this is just something which is the most important thing, And the reason why this is an insecurity that can sneak up on us is because if we've made the decision that this is just the way the world is, we never look at that again. Instead, we need to come with curiosity and be like, what were the experiences, what were the events that happened in life that made us feel that way? Because it didn't come out of nowhere. A lot of the time, you have to realize with self-help, self-improvement, a lot of it is trying to work around the stuff that we already have. That has a place, but anything less than fundamentally changing so that this is no longer an issue for us is settling, okay? At some point, we had to have learned these behaviors that we might not like, these insecurities, these beliefs. That means that we can unlearn them. That means that we don't just act confident, or we don't just feel a bit more confident. We no longer have skepticism or questioning or low confidence or low self-worth. That can no longer even arise for us, right? So for an example with James, is we identified the fact that he didn't just know how the world works, because in order to know that, you have to know how all 8 billion people operate. You have to know all different cultures, all different systems. You have to presuppose that everyone acts that way. And really what we were able to find out is it was all a massive projection on his part, right? He was projecting the fact that you had to be a bit tough in order to not get taken advantage of. And he works in corporate finance, so there's a little bit of a dog-eat-dog world there. Once we were able to realize that, what it meant was he was able to see, oh wait, this breakup that he went through, we could kind of see where it was going, because when you act like that, you attract people who have a bit more of a power dynamics mindset, which has the propensity to get a bit more toxic. So we're able to see how that happens. So now when he's going out and dating and wants to do all of that kind of stuff, he's not going to get caught in the same blind spot again, which will save him so much time and money, as well as having a lot more fulfillment when he's actually going out and finding a partner. And he was able to realize that this kind of barrier he was putting up was just creating issues in the workplace. Yes, people didn't take advantage of him, but what he had was an amazing ability to lead, be decisive, be able to be disliked, be a bit more abrasive, which is really necessary But because he kind of lent into that a little bit too much, what this meant was that people respected him, but he was almost a little bit too much, right? So they couldn't follow him because they know that he had no problem being in conflict and being in disargument. But for them, people are a little bit more politically minded, or people just don't have the same kind of constructs as him. They don't want to be exposed like that. And as soon as we started working on this, people started to trust him more and also look to him to be a leader more, because he had integrated this a bit more of a softness, a bit more vulnerability, while still having that incredibly strong backbone, which he was known and loved for.